this is Riley. So recently I've been thinking about cafes. They're places we go to socialize, to work, to discuss topics of intellect, or just to enjoy the delicious odor of coffee. And though many people have a favorite neighborhood cafe, if in need, you can probably find one on every other street corner. So why is it that cafes are so popular anyways? As most of us know, the name cafe comes from the French word café, which means coffee. And coffee, being first discovered in Ethiopia, some say in the 10th century, but evidence more strongly supports in the 15th century, and then it reached the Middle East around the 16th century, where they created coffee houses as places to get together and share this delicious beverage. By the 17th century, coffee houses were making their way over to Europe. And when they first started getting popular, cafes were sort of a place where people would go to discuss politics, and have debates, play social games, engage in conversations. Kind of like the salons of 18th century France, except not in someone's home, so a little bit more open. And because cafes were a place of the people, the monarchy and government didn't really pay much mind to them. So they were a safe place for many to have debates or discussions on maybe controversial political themes. And at the same time, they were a place that welcomed all different classes. They became associated with equality. However, looking into it, I did find that women were banned from coffee houses in England and France at this time, so they couldn't really be considered gender equal places, but at the time they were considered fairly equal. So because cafes offered this intellectual environment where people could talk about news and politics and play games and meet people and have exchanges and learn things, while at the same time having a low entry fee, if no fee at all, of 1 penny, they took on the name of penny universities. By the 18th century, coffee houses were a place that people would do business as well. So you would walk into a cafe and then the long communal table would just be covered with papers and writing implements. It'd be a place of work and of exchange. That being said, cafes today have really become dominated by work. When I walk into a cafe, I see people glued to their computer screens or their tablets or with papers sprawled in front of them, writing madly on something or reading. And they've actually become very silent places, except the music that's usually playing overhead. And I find it really interesting because recently I was speaking with a couple friends from France, and at 2 different occasions I heard the same thing, which was cafes in France aren't the way that cafes are here in Canada, or at least the cafes that I've been into in Canada. That's to say that when you go into a cafe in France, often it's a place for people to socialize. You may not be sitting down at a table with strangers, but you're still going there to socialize. Whereas here I walk into a cafe and, like I said, everyone is just sitting in solitude and doing their work. And while looking into this online, I found a lot of people saying that it might have to do with Wi-Fi accessibility. You can pretty much expect almost any cafe that you go into in Canada to have Wi-Fi, but it's not necessarily the same case in France. So cafes have become this little Wi-Fi hub where you get to go and do what you have to do while still being in a place that isn't your home. And this Wi-Fi accessibility provided by cafes has become increasingly attractive to the increasing population of people who work at home, like yours truly. They've become this central office for e-commuters, rather than places of discussion and exchange. And in attempts to combat this trend, some people have started creating no-fi cafes, and even banning laptops so that people go there to talk and not just to sit on their devices. So what is a cafe to you? What do you use them for? Personally, I kind of find it unfortunate that trends like this are making it more convenient for people to isolate themselves and more difficult to have random encounters and meet other people. I don't know, I think the idea of a no-fi cafe is kind of appealing. Anyways, there's a little bit on the history of cafes, and I'll see you next Friday.